Well, I thank you, Mark, very much for taking the time. It's you know how tough it is to break in, and let's start with that as the question. How did you make a decision and then break in as a writer out of Alaska?
Well, I was I don't I made a decision to break in when I was about 17, and then it took me till I was 38 to actually break in. I just had some really good teachers that kind of pushed me along in high school, and a great aunt that was a librarian. I mean, she was my aunt, but she was a great aunt that pushed me along with books. And so I just kept at it and kept getting rejection letters and finally decided, hey, I'm a horseshoer. I was a mounted police officer. I can write Westerns. So I didn't write about Alaska in the beginning. I broke in writing Westerns. Went to a
That,
conference, and I've seen you at several conferences. So, I think, and I think you can talk a little bit more about this too. Being from Alaska is an instant conversation piece. So when you and I meet at Thriller Fest or at BoucherCon or whatever,
right.
it's immediately something can
That,
talk.
it stirs the pot. When I was in the middle of my business career, before I began seriously writing, one of the things I found, I could go to New York City and walk into any Irish pub and never buy dinner. All
Mhm.
I had to do was say, I'm from Alaska. And people come over and buy you a beer. And, why don't you stay and have dinner with us?
Mhm.
There was something unique. But the other side of that is I found, and chatting with a lot of people, it was coached to me early not to get typecast as an Alaska author. Because once you get typecast that way, it's almost impossible to break into the national market. I noticed with your Jericho Quinn novels, they were national and international novels. They were not about Alaska. In fact, very little Alaska in those novels. So um, when I began, I did the same thing. And I have to tell you, having known you for years and watched your work, followed in your steps in that way.
No, you're right. I think we typecast ourselves sometimes.
Mhm.
In my Arliss Cutter series, Alaska is a character. In fact, that's how I met you because I
Yeah.
was doing research and ended up somehow, I can't remember, maybe through the school system, got uh, put in touch with your wife, and she helped me with some research on the very first Arliss Cutter novel. So, yeah, you're right. I think we can really typecast ourselves and forget that it's not about where we live. It's a good story is a good story is a good story.
Absolutely. But you touched on something that I love. I write two series now. I've got a historical fiction series I call the Grit series, and then the second series is an international thriller series. In the Grit series, um, it's similar to your Jericho Quinn. Alaska's always there somewhere, but that's not the heart of the story. And yet, every time I'm looking for a little bit of extra edge, I can look outside and see the land and the weather and realize I could add just a little more of this, and I've got a whole new character that I plug into the story that makes things a lot more complex and a lot more exciting.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're a pilot, right?
I am.
Yeah, so as a pilot, you pay attention to the weather all the time, right? And in my career in the Marshal Service, I was a man tracker and wasn't a pilot, but we had pilots and we flew with, they flew us all around. The weather becomes, in fact, I remember years ago, one of my editors said, "How come there's always a storm moving in one of your books?" And I said, "Because that's Alaska. That's Tuesday, right?"
Yeah,
So you as a pilot, I'm sure whether you're writing about a plane or not, you have to be thinking about that character of the weather.
every morning I get up, that's the first thing I check. I check the weather here. I check the weather in other places that I care about around the state. Um, and but I found it is a lot of fun to add that little additional dimension. Um, can I get out of town before the weather hits? Can I get off from this ground, this airstrip or this gravel bar before the weather hits and closes down on me? And especially if there's somebody evil hunting me. Um,
Mhm.
so um, when you started, Mark, did you start with an agent or did you start self-publish?
No, so I published kind of a local book up here, and then the first time I was ever New York published, and got any traction really was with I went to a conference in Helena, Montana, Western Writers of America, and did one of those round robin speed dating things where I talked to agents and editors and whoever I could talk to, and ended up selling a book there. So, but I had to, people always say, how did you get an agent? So how did you get published? It's lightning in a bottle, and I'm a martial artist and I study and practice jujitsu. My jujitsu is different than your jujitsu is different from so and so's jujitsu. Getting published is about writing a good story, and I pitched it at a conference. An editor there liked it. She hired me to do some ghost writing for another Western writer who's very famous. Then she got let go, so I was orphaned. In the meantime, she had given my chapters to an agent, and so the agent called me. For me, it was out of the blue. A lot of stuff going on in the background, but Robin Rue with Writer's House emailed me and said, "My name's Robin Rue. I'm with this agency. I'd like to represent you." So how do you teach somebody that? It's just writing a story and being in the right place at the right time. It's not, it's definitely more art than science.
Yeah, our experience has been different. We're we will fingers crossed. I think this is a done deal. We will sign with an agent for the first time in December, and
Congratulations.
for one book series outside of what I'm currently writing. And I'd always heard that agents really struggle if you are self-publishing and they're afraid of the damage that may have been done or that you've already been exposed and so forth. Um, I I did the same thing. I went through the query process for quite some time, wrote it off. My wife is as stubborn as your wife. Both of them are ex-teachers; they have to be. Um, and she finally just said, well, let's go do this ourselves, and we did, and we've had some real success with it.
Mhm.
And finally, have enough notoriety that instead of it being a turnoff that we're self-publishing, people are saying, well, we don't have to build from scratch.
Right.
And that has been, in fact, in my blog that comes out this week, that's one of the comments they make for new writers. I only know one way to do this, and that's just keep writing.
Yep.
Just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. So